Hello and welcome to English 101, Section 1001. I'll be your instructor, Dr. Sam Lackey, and this is the Week 1 lecture. So I would like to do two things here in our first lecture video. For starters, I just want to introduce the class in a pretty broad, general way. We'll talk a little bit about the syllabus, a little bit about sort of what the class is, what we're going to be doing in here. We can talk about some of our assignments. We'll also mention our textbook and Web Campus or Canvas, which we're going to be using a lot, of course, because this is an online class. So we'll go over all of those basic kind of first day things. We'll do that pretty quickly at the beginning of this lecture, and then we'll move on to the second part, which really is our week one material, covering our first handful of concepts and our first reading assignment for the semester. But let's start with some really general stuff. If you can, you might want to go ahead and log into Canvas. If you are a GBC student, you should be able to do this. Just make sure you know your username and your password. And once you log in, look for our course. Again, this is English 101, Composition 1, and our section number is 1001. So once you click on the class, you'll be inside and you can take a look at our weekly modules. So I post these 1 week at a time. So the week one module is already available for you to view. And generally, this is how we're going to do things every week. At the beginning of each week, I will post that week's module. And inside the module is everything you need for that week. So you can take a look at what's in the week one module. You'll see the syllabus. Now, I won't include that in every week's module. I just do that here at the beginning, so you can access it in the week one module, or you can click on the syllabus tab over on your toolbar that you should be able to see once you get into Canvas. But either way, take a look at the syllabus. That's one of the first things you need to do as we get started this semester. You don't necessarily need to read it word for word. It is a relatively long document. It's about 7 pages. But just browse, peruse it, take a look at your leisure. Again, we're not going to go through it in a great amount of detail right now, but I will point out a few important things. Beginning on page 1, you'll see just the basic info about the class and also my contact information. So you'll see my email. You'll also see my office phone number and my office hours on Wednesday. So I am based at the Winnemucca Center of Great Basin College. So if any of you are local to the area, you can always drop by during my office hours and we can talk in person. But of course, for most of us, the best way to contact me will be to email me. You can also call me in the office during office hours, but generally email works best for an online class. You can always reach me through email, and I will usually be able to answer within a 24-hour period. If you don't hear back from me within roughly 1 day, feel free to email me again. So if you have any questions, any issues, things that you want to work on, things that you might need a little bit of extra help on, or if you've fallen behind, you have questions or concerns of any kind, always feel free to email. You can also email me over the weekend. My response time might be a little bit slower between, Friday evening and Sunday, but I generally check my email every day or at least close to it, and certainly from Monday to Friday, I check every day. So that's a good way for us to communicate, but also remember, we can always put together video conferences. If you want to meet but you're not close by, but you want to actually, sit down, work through a draft, ask me some specific questions, we can work on an assignment, whatever you want to do, we can always hold those video conferences through Zoom. If that's something you're interested in, you probably have some experience doing Zoom meetings at this point since COVID, and we have incorporated that technology into a lot of our online classes here at GBC. So later in the semester, we actually have required video conferences where each of you will need to meet with me one-on-one, but it's also an option at any other time if you so choose. Another thing to take a look at on page 1 of the syllabus is the required material for the class. So we only have one required book, and that is 50 Essays, the 6th edition. All right, so make sure you get the proper edition. They change the book a little bit each time they come out with a new edition. So if you get an older version, it's not going to have the same readings as the edition that we are using. Okay, so we want the 6th. That's the number 6. That's what I've been using for the last few semesters, and I ordered it through the GBC bookstore. So if you go to the website, you can order it directly from there, but you can also just go to Google and search for the book. You'll be able to find used copies, electronic versions. If you want an ebook, that's fine. You can find the book for a pretty cheap price if you do a little bit of looking. And that's fine with me. I don't care if it's an ebook. I don't care if it's used, as long as you have the book. And if you have the book, you'll be able to complete all of our reading assignments, starting this week with the introductory chapter to the book. The first 10 pages, that's what we need to read by the end of this week. So going back to Canvas now, if you take a look again at the week 1 module, you'll see the syllabus. You'll also see the week 1 overview. So this is something I like to do at the start of each week when I post that week's module. I'll always include an overview, a summary of what we are doing in the class for that week, just so you can kind of have a general idea of what's to come. And also, the overview is valuable if you miss time. If you're away from your studies for a week or maybe 2 weeks, you're sick, you're out of town, family emergency, whatever the case may be, and you miss something, you can always go back to that week's overview and take a look at what you missed, what we did. The overview almost functions sort of like lecture notes. I'm telling you kind of what I'm covering that week. Not super detailed, but it gives you that general summary, and that's often helpful. Also, in the overview, I'll include the reading assignment for that week and whatever the writing assignment is for that week. All of the information will be provided. I'll also, put in some funny videos. Sometimes my lecture video will be embedded within the weekly overviews, but you can also access my videos and the assignment links just by looking at the main module page. You'll see all of that. Again, going back to the week 1 module, you see our first discussion post. That's our first written assignment. The link is there. Click on it, read the instructions, and then when you're ready, you can submit your post. I've also included a PDF version of the introductory chapter to our book because I realized at the beginning of the semester, a lot of people haven't gotten the book yet. Maybe we are waiting for it to arrive, or maybe we are waiting for our financial aid to come through so we can afford to buy the book. I get it. So for the first couple of weeks, I will provide PDF versions of our assigned reading. So we're just tackling that introductory chapter this week. That's already posted, and I'll probably post the reading for next week as well. But after week 2, I expect everybody to have the book. So if you haven't ordered it yet, you might want to go ahead and do that if possible. At the very least, find the book and make sure that when you are ready, when the funds are there, you'll be able to place the order. And let me know if you have any questions or if you're having any trouble finding the book. So going back to the syllabus, you can just kind of, skim it, read the stuff that's important, take a look at the policies, take a look at the assignments. I include point values for all of our assignments. But the most important thing to really look at and hang on to in the syllabus begins over on page 5. So it's a 7-page document overall. Go to page 5 and you'll see the detailed class schedule. So this is the part I really want you guys to save, or just keep it handy, because this is a really good thing to look at periodically. This is a class schedule for the entire semester, and I'm going week by week. So I'm telling you what we are doing each and every week of the semester. So all of the due dates for our assignments are included. All of the reading assignments are included. I'm also telling you basically what we are covering each week. So if you miss time, or if you are trying to work ahead, if you know that you're going to be out of town during, let's say, week 10, and you want to go ahead and do that week's work ahead of time, you might want to take a look at the class schedule. You can see what we're doing that week, and you can ask me to make the assignment available in Canvas if it's not already. And I'm always happy to do that. All of the assignments are ready to go. I just keep them locked until we're getting close to, working on them. So if it's not already published or available in Canvas and you want to go ahead and get started, just talk to me, email me, let me know, and I can always help you with that. All right, and just, take a look. This will give you an idea of what we are doing throughout the semester, and you might notice that the semester schedule is broken up into 4 different units. And these units correspond to our 4 major essays that we are working on in this class. Obviously, this is composition 1. So our primary focus is improving our writing skills. We are trying to grow and develop as writers. But a big part of improving as a writer is improving as a reader. As we're going to see, reading and writing skills really go hand in hand. So throughout the semester, we're going to be learning different writing techniques. We're going to be writing different types of essays, but we're also going to be reading on a weekly basis. And the reading will reinforce what we are learning about the writing. And we're going to be able to practice both activities, and we'll see how they dovetail very nicely throughout the entire class. So if you look at the 4 units, we start with narrative. To be more specific, descriptive narratives. And we start talking about those next week and week 2. So I give you guys kind of this first week just to get acclimated. We kind of get introduced to the course. You can get up and running. And then we jump into our first writing style or technique in week 2. So we spend a few weeks working on narratives. And as we're practicing writing narratives, we're also going to be reading examples of narratives in 50 essays. So that's really how I use the book for the most part. Whatever we're working on at that particular time, we're going to read examples of it in the book. So that way we see how professional writers do narratives or do, argumentative pieces, and we can sort of emulate some of their approaches. We can be inspired. We can see what we maybe don't want to do, but it always helps to look at examples. So beginning next week, we're going to read some examples of narratives while also learning the basics of writing narratives. And once we've spent a little bit of time doing that, we'll talk more about description in week 3. And then by week 4, we can start working on our own descriptive narratives after we've seen plenty of examples of narratives and good descriptive writing in our book. So that's our first essay, will be the descriptive narrative due at the end of week 4. Then we move on to unit 2, which is analysis. And we're going to be practicing a very specific type of analysis called process analysis. We're going to read examples, we're going to practice, and then we're going to write process analyses of our own. That comes in around the midway point. That's essay 2. That's the midway point of the semester. And then we move on to comparing and contrasting. We'll also be doing some classification, a little bit of definition as well. All of those writing techniques kind of go together, and we'll be using all of them in essay 3. And of course, we'll be reading examples as we work. And then we move on to our 4th and final unit, which is argumentative writing. And that gives us a chance to really do something important for our future. We need to really master argumentative writing, and we're going to do a little bit of research because those are important skills in 102. As most of you know, English 102 here at GBC and at most other places is really built around an argumentative research paper. So we need to start practicing some of those skills at the end of 101 so they can carry over with you into 102. So that's basically how the class is structured. We have 4 major essays, as we've just seen, and then we have weekly discussion posts. And we have our first one this week. Normally, the discussion post will just be a chance for you to respond to whatever we read that week, whatever essays from the book we read. This week, we're just reading the introductory chapter, which is useful, but it doesn't really give us a whole lot to respond to. So this week, we're going to do something a little bit different with our discussion post. I'm going to let you guys use song lyrics. You're going to choose a song that you like, find the lyrics to that song, and then you're going to respond. You're going to use some of the critical and active reading strategies that we learn about in the first chapter of the book in order to respond to these songs, respond to the lyrics. So that's going to be our first written assignment. I'll talk more about that at the end of lecture. So it's good to get into a routine with any class, and certainly with this class because it is an asynchronous online class. You can always talk to me, but other than direct communication with me, you really need to rely on Canvas the most when it comes to keeping up with what we are doing in here. So at the beginning of each week, whenever you get a chance, at some point Monday, maybe Tuesday at the latest, take a look at that week's module. I always publish them first thing Monday morning, so the week 1 module already up. You can take a look at what we're doing for the week, and then you have the entire week to get the work for that week done. So for us, a week begins first thing Monday morning. That's when everything's posted. And then you have until midnight Sunday to submit your work for that week. Whether that's a discussion post or maybe one of our big essays, you have until the end of the week. For us, deadlines are always Sunday night at midnight unless I tell you otherwise. Okay? So you also need to complete the week's reading by the time you get to midnight on Sunday. So you have the whole week to complete your reading and to complete whatever written assignments I've told you about. And of course, if you ever have questions or if there's something missing from the module, if you're not seeing something, let me know. Sometimes that's a mistake on my part and I can fix it, or I can just tell you where to go. All right, so that's pretty much all we need to say about the syllabus, but go ahead and download it, save it to your own device if possible. You might even want to print it. At the very least, hang on to the class schedule that begins on page 5. And if you have any questions about the syllabus, let me know. So let's talk a little bit about that opening chapter from 50 essays. If you haven't read it yet, that's fine. I'm just going to go over some basic strategies that they cover in the chapter. These are really foundational, important concepts for us. These are things that we're going to be using and talking about really throughout the entire semester. So it's good to understand them here at the beginning. So in the book, they talk about being an active reader. And I really want to start with that. Let's talk a little bit more about reading. Because like I said before, if we want to improve as writers, we have to read a lot. Not only do we want to read examples of the kind of writing that we are doing, we also want to learn how to improve our reading, how to become closer readers, more engaged readers, more active readers, because that's just going to help us in all walks of life. So the book talks about active reading. That's a pretty self-explanatory concept, but I just wanted to draw a little bit of a comparison here, a contrast between active reading and what we might consider passive reading or casual reading. So we often engage in casual, passive reading, and that's fine. If you're just reading for fun, if you're just reading for pleasure, you don't always have to pay a whole lot of attention. I think you guys can relate to this. If you're just scrolling through, social media, or if you're looking at a text message, or maybe you're just flipping through a magazine, in the, waiting room of a doctor's office, or maybe you're on vacation, you're at the beach, and you're just reading something that's kind of entertaining, it's fun, it does not require that much thought. In those situations, passive, casual reading is fine. So, you're kind of relaxing. You can't see me that well, but I'm reclining. I'm reading passively, right? My phone's right here. I have multiple browsers open on my computer. Maybe I'm talking to somebody in the next room. I have some music playing. In other words, I'm a bit distracted, right? I am reading. We can all read, right? We're all literate. So I'm looking at the words. I understand what individual words mean. And even though I'm distracted, even though I'm not thinking very hard about what I'm reading, I still get a general idea, right? We're all familiar with this. You get the gist of it. You get the basic sense of what that thing is, what is it, what's it about, what's the overall point. We're pretty clear on that. If somebody asked you, hey, what were you reading? You would be able to tell them, hey, what was it about? Was it good? Was it interesting? You could probably answer those questions, but you're still only on the surface. You're just on the surface level. You're missing a lot of details because you're not paying that much attention, right? Because you're distracted. Now, we're all very good multitaskers in the year 2023, and there's a lot of value to that. Like I said, there's a lot of situations in life where skimming or just getting the basic surface meaning of a text is fine. That might be enough, especially when you're just reading for pleasure. You're just hanging out. But when you are reading for school, when you are responsible for not just getting a general idea of what the text is about, but when you're going to be responsible for responding to the text, writing about it at length, answering difficult questions about it, you need a higher level of reading. You need to engage with that text on a higher level. Passive reading's not going to cut it when you're doing the reading that we need to do in this class. So to be an active reader, it really all starts with a pen or a cursor on your computer, because you need to start writing. You need to start marking up whatever it is that you are reading. So I still do this in the old-fashioned way. If I'm reading an actual book, I have a pen in hand. I turn the music off, put my phone away, tell my roommate to stop talking to me, whatever, and I'm going to focus. You got to find a place where you're comfortable. Everybody works and reads a little bit differently. So if you like some kind of, atmospheric background music, that's fine. Put on your headphones, get comfortable, get a cup of tea, whatever you need. But you need to tune out most other distractions. Focus on the text and the text alone. And you need to start writing down notes. And you need to start underlining and highlighting, and annotating. So that's what the book talks about as some of these basic active reading strategies. We start with underlining, also circling or highlighting. It just depends on how you want to do it. But you literally need to start underlining individual words, individual sentences, or maybe really important ideas in whatever it is that you are reading. So you're going to be picking out really important stuff, the most important stuff. Underlining is often done for emphasis and selection. So you're really zeroing in on the most important aspects, the most important components of this text. And again, that could be individual words, that could be entire statements, or just ideas or concepts that the author is talking about. That maybe the author is talking about a lot, and they seem important, so you want to just make a little underline, circle them, put them in brackets, If you have a highlighter, an actual highlighter pen, you can highlight. Also, if you're reading on your screen, and I know this is how many of us do it these days, you can still underline. If you're using Microsoft Word or say Google Docs or Adobe, most of these programs have resources available to you that will allow you to highlight stuff, underline stuff, and write annotations. So what are annotations? In this particular context, when we use that word, we just mean notes. They talk about this in the book, right? When you are annotating, that just means you're writing down notes as you read. You see, a lot of students are a little hesitant to do this at first because they think, well, if I'm writing as I'm reading, that's just going to slow me down. It's going to take me longer to finish the reading assignment. And yeah, that's probably true. But that extra time is worthwhile because anytime you underline something or circle it because you think it's important, you need to just go ahead and make a note. Write down your explanation. Write down what you think the author means when they said that. Write down what that statement means to you. You can really write down anything in these notes. It's very informal and it's very open. Not a lot of rules here. If you want some examples of what typical annotations look like, turn to page 5 in that intro chapter to 50 essays. They show you what a student's underlining and annotations might look like, and you'll see, we're not splitting the atom here. The student is just writing down some ideas, some opinions. Often what you'll notice is the student will underline something that's important, and then they'll have an annotation that goes along with that underlining. So, this is an important idea, and here's what I think it means. Or here's my own opinion about it. Do I agree, disagree, whatever. So in some cases, you're just writing down comments or notes in the margins of the page, right? The white space on the sides of the page. Again, you can do this in a hard copy or on a screen. You're just making notes. They could be comments, they could be opinions. In some cases, they might even be like interpretations or explanations of what the author is saying. You guys know this. Sometimes when you're reading, the language is different than your language. The author's tone and style is very different from your own tone, your own style. So that can make comprehension a little bit challenging because the language sounds different, doesn't sound like the way you talk or the way you write. It doesn't sound like the way other people write or talk. So sometimes your annotations can be your chance to translate. You're taking this weird, different language and you're turning it into something that's more familiar and recognizable to you so you can better understand it. And that's really what annotating is all about. It's a way to better understand what you read. It's also a way to better remember what you read. I think we know by this point in our educational careers that it's hard to remember stuff that we read a long time ago. Neuroscientists have actually shown through research and experiments that humans are really bad at remembering read text, like stuff that we've read on a page. We're really bad at remembering it. So it's good to create a written record. That's what we're doing when we underline and annotate. We're picking out the most important stuff, so if we need to write about this piece later, we can come back and find the most important components. And also we have notes, so we're going to be able to remember some of those big ideas. We're going to remember how we felt about what the author was saying, what the author was doing. Oh yeah, now I remember. He was talking about this and it made me feel like that. So that written record, that sort of body of knowledge that we are creating by underlining and annotating, it will help you. It might take a little extra time to do it, but it will help you later. especially if you have to come back and write about that text at some point for me or maybe in a future class for somebody else. And then the final strategy they mention in the book when it comes to active reading is just being willing to ask questions. And this sounds really obvious, and I mentioned that some of your annotations might come in the form of questions, and that's fine. You need to ask questions. A lot of students think asking questions is a bad thing. They think, oh, if I'm asking questions, that means I don't get it, I'm doing something wrong, I'm going to irritate the professor. But that's really not the case. I mean, not all questions are created equal. So yeah, you want to ask good questions, but it's fine if you don't understand everything right away. A lot of the stuff that we're reading, a lot of the essays that we are reading over the course of the semester might be a little bit difficult or strange to you. You might need to read them more than once in some cases, and you need to engage with them. You need to grapple with them, figure them out. And sometimes that's a long process. That doesn't always happen immediately. So asking questions is good. It shows that you are thinking. It shows that you are engaged with the text, you're thinking about what the author had to say, and you are trying to formulate your own opinions. You're trying to arrive at your own conclusions. So it's good to write down any questions that you might still have once you are finished reading. So you might have some questions already jotted down as annotations in the margins. But again, you're writing your annotations as you go, as you read. It's almost like you're having a conversation with the author. What do you mean by that? I don't like that. Or I agree, I think you're right. I think what you're saying is this. So you're having that conversation, but then once you finish reading, if you still have any final questions that you haven't already written down, go ahead and write them down. And in some cases, you might be able to find the answers to those questions yourself. You might be able to figure them out with additional reading, a little bit of research, whatever. In other cases, you might come to me for the answers, or you might even go to classmates. You might be able to pick some things up on the discussion board, which will always be open threads, so you guys can read each other's posts. You can learn from each other, pick up some ideas. You can directly address each other, talk to each other. There's lots of ways to find answers. But it's okay if it takes you a few days, few weeks to get all of those questions answered, because it can be a process. But by getting all of that stuff written down, like I said, you're going to have a better chance at understanding the text. You're also going to be deeply engaged with the text, and you're going to be able to remember the text. So by doing those things, you become a much more active, critical reader. You're engaged, you're closely working with the text, you're not just sort of glancing over it. At this level, we need that close level of engagement and detail. We have to be active, so that means writing, whether you are typing in Adobe or writing with your pen on your book. Now, a quick note, I understand a lot of us might want to sell our book back at the end of the semester, so a lot of times we're reluctant to mark up the book because we're afraid we won't get our money back. Fine, I mean, I get it, but you can always find a way. If you don't want to write directly on your book, just create some notes. I mean, just write on a scrap sheet of paper. You can have a notebook that you sort of devote to this class, or a binder. That would be a good idea. You can sort of keep your annotations in there. And even if you don't want to underline directly on the book, you can just write down the words or the sentences that you would have underlined. But if you have an ebook, you really can do this pretty easily, and it's not going to really have any material impact on the book itself. So try to find a way to underline or annotate to do both. Everybody has their own system. Just find what works for you. And I want you guys to do this every time we read something. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to. Again, at first it might feel like it's slowing you down, but you'll get the hang of it. You'll get comfortable. And a lot of times when we annotate, we can sort of use a shorthand. You can abbreviate. You can write, fragments. It's always for you. I'm never going to ask you to submit your annotations to me, right? Annotations and underlining and asking good questions, these are all strategies for you. They benefit you. They're not really things that you turn in. They're just ways to read better. And if you can read better, soon enough, you're going to start writing better as well. All right, so I want to go ahead and wrap up this first lecture, but let's just talk a little bit about the writing process, because they also discuss that in the intro chapter, and then we'll conclude by talking about our first discussion post of the semester. So the writing process is a very important thing for me. It's very important in this class, so we are going to be talking about it quite a bit throughout the semester. So for now, I just want to go over the basics, and we'll get into a lot more detail later. But the thing you guys have to remember, in this class, we are all writers. Maybe you like to write, maybe you don't. But it really doesn't matter, because as long as you're in 101, you are a writer. You're writing big essays, and you're also writing shorter discussion posts on a weekly basis. So we are writing at least something every week. So you need to start thinking of yourselves as writers, and you need to start thinking about writing as a multi-step process. Not necessarily something that can be done in a single night or a single hour, a single sitting. And I know we've done a lot of writing like that probably in previous classes. Oh man, this paper's due tomorrow. I better write it tonight. Maybe you pull an all-nighter. Maybe that worked for you in the past. Maybe that was an effective approach for you. But at this level, the kind of work I'm expecting in English 101 demands a different approach. We need to break writing up into individual stages and steps. That will definitely improve the quality of your writing. I can guarantee it. So for us, we have 3 major stages of the writing process, starting with pre-writing. And just think about that prefix. It just means everything that you do before you actually write whatever it is that you're writing. So pre-writing is all about generating ideas, brainstorming, just jotting down ideas. And then once you've done that, you can start to outline. And the outline is a detailed plan for your paper. It's like a blueprint. If you think of your paper as a house that you need to build, the outline is the blueprint for that house. It's the plan. It's what you follow. And you might deviate from it a little bit, but it gives you a framework to guide you as you move on to the second stage, which is drafting. And that just means you are writing the paper. You are writing the assignment. But the key thing for drafting to remember is you're going to have multiple drafts, at least 2. Everybody will have a rough draft and then a final draft. And you might end up with multiple rough drafts. But again, this is a process, right? We're not going to sit down and create a wonderful, polished final draft on our first go-round. It's just not going to work that way. It doesn't even go that way for professionals. Professional writers have to write multiple drafts because the first draft is never great. It might be pretty close to what you want. It's got your ideas, it's got good stuff, but there's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be things that you can clean up, things to improve. So we always want to transition from a rough draft to a final draft. And the way we do that is to move to stage 3, which is post-writing. That means everything we do after we have finished writing a draft. So to post-write, that means we are revising and editing. We are improving the paper on the sentence level, on the paragraph level, and then we move into eliminating mistakes. Getting rid of typos, grammatical issues, punctuation issues, citation issues, whatever the case may be. And those are really the final steps. So remember, within each one of those stages that I just went through, there are individual steps that we'll talk about more later. But there are 2 steps to post writing. First you revise, then you edit, and once you're finished editing, you're ready to submit your final draft. So we'll talk about this, and I'm going to give you guys time for each major essay. We're going to go through these different stages. We are going to be going through these different steps so that you can end up with a finished product that you can be proud of, and a finished product that will meet my standards. So we'll get comfortable with the writing process the more we do it, the more we discuss it. For now, I'll just leave it at that, and you guys can watch the funny video I posted from The Simpsons. That's kind of an example of the right way to approach a writing project and the wrong way to approach a writing project. You'll be able to tell the difference if you watch the video. Okay, so the final thing I want to mention is our first week's assignment. So I've already mentioned our reading assignment, that intro chapter to 50 essays. If you don't have the book yet, just check out the PDF that I've posted in the week 1 module. All right, but like I said, that's kind of dry. We don't have a whole lot to respond to there. So for our discussion post, typically we're just responding to the essays that we read in the book. We'll start doing that next week, in week 2, when we start reading some narratives. But for this week, you guys can do something a little bit fun and creative. For the first discussion post, I want you to find those song lyrics. Like I said, pick a song that you like. It can be any song, any genre, any time period, any language, any subject matter. Just keep in mind your classmates will be reading this. I will be reading it. So let's keep it, relatively PG. But otherwise, no rules. Just pick a song that you like. The next step is to find the lyrics online. That's easy. Just type the song into Google, add the word lyrics, and you should be able to find them for free. If you can print them, great. If you can save them, download them, that's also great. Or you can just have them pulled up on your screen, but you really need to have those lyrics right next to you. They need to be handy as you're completing this first discussion post, okay? So really all we're doing is responding to the song. But I want you to practice using these active reading strategies. So before you write anything, I want you to underline, annotate, and ask questions. Now, if you're reading this stuff on a screen, maybe you can't mark up the lyrics themselves, but you can open your notebook, you can grab some scratch paper and write your annotations, write the key words or phrases that you would have underlined. Just write them all down. Any questions that you might have. I mean, some song lyrics are pretty complex. Other song lyrics are just about, fun, having fun, and they're pretty simple. But if you have questions, jot them down. Also, look for important stuff, right? You're looking to underline or circle words or ideas that just seem important to the overall meaning of the song, because you're going to be responsible for explaining to me what the song means, why it connects with you or resonates with you, why you think the meaning of the song is kind of important or relevant to other people. Just basic things. But if you find repetition, right? A lot of songs feature repeated words or phrases. Look at the chorus. You might want to circle those. Key images, really important images that appear multiple times, or they're really connected to, the overall message of the song. Underline those or write those down. Write down your notes, your comments, your opinions, your thoughts, your questions. And once you've done all of that active reading, go ahead and write your post. Write your response to the lyrics. But make sure you're responding to what I'm asking as well. I'm giving you some kind of specific questions to help guide your response, to help guide this first discussion post. So take a look at my instructions, and as you're writing, again, you might even want to practice these different stages of the writing process. You can do a little pre-writing, jot down some ideas. Here's what I think the meaning of the song is. I'm going to focus on, this line, this word, this image. get those ideas, get a little bit of an outline jotted down, and then you can write your post. And then before you hit submit, do a little bit of editing, just a little. Give yourself one read through. Catch any obvious mistakes, clean up anything that's not clear, make sure your formatting looks good. So that way we're sort of practicing these basic stages of the writing process. And once you feel good about your final draft, go ahead and submit it and I'll take a look. So if you have any questions about anything I've talked about here today, just email me, let me know. Take a look at the syllabus, take a look at the week 1 module in Canvas. Have fun with this first discussion, but treat your song seriously. Treat the meaning of the song seriously. The song might be goofy, it might be fun, but treat your own task as a serious task. You are explaining this song to me, you're telling me the most important stuff about this song, and you are providing a response that shows me that you're going to be a good active reader this semester. Okay, so I'll talk to you guys soon. We're going to jump into descriptive narratives next week. So next week's going to be a more typical week for us. We're going to read a couple of examples of narratives in our book, and we'll start learning about the key strategies for writing narratives of our own. So I'll see you then. Let me know if you have questions.